Welcome to the Get Trauma Informed podcast, dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma, its pervasive impact, and the journey towards holistic recovery and realignment. If your radiance has ever felt muted, like I and thousands of others, you're in the right place to reignite your inner light. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast. On today's episode of our series on trauma recovery our mini series today, we're going to talk a little bit about stored trauma and what does stored trauma look like when it shows up in our bodies. We know that physical trauma can show up psychologically and psychological trauma can show up physically. So in our mini series today, we just want you to be able to identify how stored trauma actually shows up in your body. It can show up as insomnia, anxiety, dissociation, muscle tension, depression, anger, memory issues, difficulty communicating, avoidance coping, back pain, nightmares, brain fog, exhaustion, headaches, low energy, aches, pains, diarrhea, constipation, and also nausea. So oftentimes when we keep running back and forth to the doctors because we're having some type of an issue and they can't find anything wrong with you, or your test results come back negative, you may want to consider, have you dealt with any unresolved trauma, right? So unresolved trauma does not disappear. No matter how much we bury it, no matter how much we try to anesthetize it with unhealthy habits such as drinking, drugs, sex, pornography, gambling, gaming, there's all sorts of ways that we deal with our trauma, or I should say that we attempt to deal with the trauma by drowning it out. You can't drown it out because it actually gets worse. And as time goes on, because it's progressive, it'll explode or it'll come out in a very, very unhealthy manner. When you see road rage or you see people acting out of a place of it doesn't make sense to you, or they're operating from a place or it shows up in an unhealthy manner, that's because they have not dealt with their trauma. So on today's mini trauma recovery talk, I just wanted to help you to identify with and become more aware of trauma that is stored. And so what we want to do is to make sure that we are listening in on the podcast, such as the Get Trauma Informed podcast, that we're taking notes in our journal, that we're actually looking inward and examining ourselves. And it's okay to take time out of your busy schedule to sit maybe in a quiet place, somewhere maybe with a little jazz music playing, maybe with some candles burning, some water in the background, somewhere that's going to relax you all the way down to your soul. And it's going to help you to be able to pull up any issues that you may have not faced or that you may be, I guess, trying to resolve in unhealthy ways, just to help cope and just to help get through it. One of the things on our list was avoidance coping. And that's what happens when you try and cope, but it's a avoidance rather a dealing with. There was another here that we oftentimes don't associate any of actually these things on our list. We don't associate them with trauma. Dissociation is another one. That's a real serious side effect or symptom of stored trauma, is dissociation. That means you haven't dealt with it. You've stuffed it down, then all of a sudden you are there, but you're not actually there because your mind is just not functioning properly at that point. But there is hope. There is a way out. You may want to visit us and take maybe one of our courses or sign up for a consultation at oasiswellnessctrs.com. There is a resolution. Bye for now. It's time to buckle up. No more suffering in silence. Our Power Pack journey to recovery and realignment starts now. Remember, you were collateral damage on someone else's warpath. Trauma is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast.